US President Donald Trump's early departure did not derail the G7 summit, hosted by Canada. Prime Minister Mark Carney insisted. The event, held in the mountain resort of Kananaskis, wrapped up without the traditional communiqué or an agreed statement on Ukraine, but there was this family photo. Some sources claim the US was not keen on issuing a joint statement. This is something that President Volodymyr Zelensky had hoped for, because Washington is still trying to bring Russia to the negotiating table. Meanwhile, European Union leaders seemed eager to charm South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. There were warm hugs from French President Emmanuel Macron and a firm handshake from German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who reminisced about a past trip he had to South Africa. Economist Davy Root, in an interview, suggested that Europe's sudden warmth towards China and now South Africa might be less about diplomacy and more about sending a message to Trump.
You always have to remember that there's always politics behind all decisions and moves that politicians make. And I've got a suspicion that part of the reason why the European leaders are cozying up to Cyril Ramaphosa, not only to our president, but to many other presidents like Xi Jinping, for example, it's not really because they like us all of a sudden, but it's simply to get back at Donald Trump. I think that's part of the reason. So what we're seeing is a political game here. And politicians are positioning themselves in such a manner is that they want to get back at their other political rivals. And at the moment, the Europeans do not like Donald Trump. And one way of getting to Donald Trump is to be friendly with the South African president. And let's be honest, the South African political leadership is actually very, very weak. They're doing a lot of damage to the South African economy, but the Europeans, they don't care really much about that. But they do see Cyril Ramaphosa as a way of actually getting to Donald Trump. And I think that is exactly what is happening at the moment.
And where was South Africa's Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, notorious for splurging taxpayers' money on international travel while all this was happening? He was in Russia. According to an official statement, the visit of the Deputy President will focus on enhancing economic cooperation between the two countries in sectors such as agriculture, automotive, energy and mining industries, as well as science and technology cooperation. He's reported to be visiting Moscow and St. Petersburg for high-level engagements and economic diplomatic activities. And while both South Africa's president and deputy president were abroad, who was left in charge back home? The Minister of Defense and Military Veterans of South Africa, Angie Motshekga. This is Linda van Tilburg for The Bigger Picture.